the importance of like discovery before building, but you don't have the time to do discovery. So how do you do it quickly, efficiently, as fast as possible? We wanted to like build something revolutionary or extremely innovative. Like that's how we saw it. We spoke to a couple of people, but we fell into this trap of happy ears, right? Like you listen for what you want to hear,
Yeah.
and we went ahead, spent a lot of effort on building this thing over a quarter, and then we heard like crickets when we launched it. No one really saw like a whole lot of value in what we built. So that was a big setback in terms of the amount of effort that had gone, planning, all of that, and the building part, the testing, and the whole shebang. We put in like a proper customer advisory board, though that sounds like a fancy name. It's basically 3 to 5 customers that are friendly with you. You incentivize them to kind of meet with you, and also discovery is a skill, right? Not every PM is built to do it or has trained to do it.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Minimum Viable podcast brought to you by PM School. I'm Ankit Bareja, co-host of this podcast. I co-host this along with my good friend and co-founder Nikunj Sharma. Hey, hi Nikunj, how's it going?
Hey, hi, good.
And today on the podcast, we have Shailesh Hegde. He's the Vice President of Product Design and Product Marketing at Hubilo. Hey, hi Shailesh, good morning. How's it going?
Hi, Ankit. Going great. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sparing, your time and, being a guest on the podcast.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
So, Shailesh, before we dive into the questions, if we can just give us a sense of your journey, how you landed in product management, and like over the last like couple of years, what you've been up to.
Yeah, sure. I started my PM journey in 2016, and the path towards that was, without having that clarity that I want to be a PM. When I started my career, I started off being a QA professional, like into software quality assurance. And along the way, I felt that I wanted to do something broader. I didn't know what, but I had heard about this thing called product management. And I guess in 2015, 2014, things had started becoming more clear in India around the product role. So I happened to just understand more about it, get in touch with certain folks who've done it before. And that's how I kind of dabbled into it. It so happened that in 2016, the company where I was at, Blue Jeans, which is a video conferencing company, and I was playing like a lead test engineer over there. They had a PM role open up. So I interviewed for that, got through that. And so I then became the first PM for Blue Jeans from India. The rest of the function was in the US. So that was kind of my first entry into product. Over the next, I guess, 4 to 5 years at Blue Jeans, got to do lots of different things in the product management space. And then I moved to Hubilo at a product leadership role. So the past 2-3 years, I've been at Hubilo, kind of leading the efforts over there. So that's in brief, like been my journey over the last 8 years or so.
Awesome. So, Shailesh, I think, I have a very strong belief that QA engineers make the best PMs, right? Like, even at PM school, we have seen so many of QA engineers transitioning into, product management. Right?
Yeah. I've held that view as well.
Yeah.
Not seen too many people do that, at least in my experience. But I feel, given that QA folks get to get their hand dirty with the product and like end to end, they get a view of it. They try to understand the user a bit more while still being very technical and thorough and all of that. I do feel that helped. And it also helped me because I've done different types of QA, which is, like individual feature testing, load, scalability, architecture, resiliency. So all of those ultimately are product requirements that you have to write as a product manager, right? When you start off. So I think all of that experience kind of somewhat helped as well.
Yeah. Like I remember one of the companies I used to work at, I would probably come up with 3 or 4 edge cases, and the QA would, give me a laundry list of edge cases.
Yeah.
They were, I felt that they were more connected to the user than I was, right?
Yeah.
Which was a really great, discovery for me. And most of those QAs are now PMs, right? That's a very interesting, I would say, untapped market for, potential product managers.
Yeah, I keep my eye out for people who show that spark.
True.
Right. So yeah, it's good to recruit them early.
Yeah.
All right. So Shailesh, product development can sometimes be tricky, right? It always involves like iteration, trial and error, and not every initiative succeeds. Like I've seen that 80-20 rule play out like over my product management career. Can setbacks obviously are super sort of disheartening, and can you share an example of a project that didn't go as planned? How do you stay motivated? Keep an eye on your team, being focused on the North Star. How do you maintain like a positive mindset when obviously failing to achieve a certain North Star and like going through multiple series of iterations?
Yeah. I think that the success rate is probably lower than the 80-20, especially given how quickly things have to be developed at a rapid pace, and you just have to keep shipping. In fact, recently I did a talk on the importance of like discovery before building, but you don't have the time to do discovery. So how do you do it quickly, efficiently, as fast as possible, so that as a product manager, you're not just following orders, right? And you actually bring your perspective. You talk to at least 2 to 3 users even, and then understand how to go about it. So of course, there's failures all the time. A couple of examples I can remember, I guess, would be we wanted to like build something that was like revolutionary or extremely innovative. Like that's how we saw it. Um, and we went ahead and maybe we spoke to a couple of people, but we fell into this trap of happy ears, right? Like you listen for what you want to hear.
Yeah.
And we went ahead, spent a lot of effort on building this thing over a quarter with lots of engineers, PMs, design bandwidths. And then we heard like crickets when we launched it. No one really saw like a whole lot of value in what we built. And this was like this new interface that we were building, and we thought it would be super cool. It did look cool, but ultimately, I think the users were like, okay, it's just one more option, and I might not use it. Only a couple of people used it. So that was a big setback in terms of the amount of effort that had gone, planning, all of that, and the building part, the testing, and the whole shebang. And after 3 months, when you see it fall flat, it's like very demotivating for the team. The team feels like, hey, we just followed like what the leadership told, and now this is what has happened. So the other piece is you have to be conscious of having the team's buy-in on anything. Um, and if the team comes and tells you that, hey, I don't think this is a great idea because one, we've not spoken to a lot of people, and two, once we've spoken, we feel like we are just having confirmation bias. Should we actually go ahead and do it or not? Because if you don't have that buy-in, and then later you can't really hold anyone accountable except like yourself as a leader, I suppose, right? So that was hard. And I think it taught us all a lesson that in the startup, especially in startups, like there's this focus on moving fast, like extremely fast, but too fast can also be damaging. And you will just end up losing a lot of time where you could have done other stuff, right? So it's always that trade-off. So we took some learnings from that. We actually then, I think 3 months later, we put in like a proper customer advisory board, though that sounds like a fancy name. It's basically 3 to 5 customers that are close to you, friendly with you. You incentivize them to kind of meet with you every week, every other week, and you just have open-ended conversations or some very specific conversations when you have a feature idea. And that started giving us some inputs. And we then started relying on all the new stuff for the roadmap or off of those conversations. For existing stuff, we would always talk to customers and the smaller enhancements would come through, but we just made it a practice. And also discovery is a skill, right? Not every PM is built to do it or has trained to do it. You have to like coach around that as well. Otherwise, again, it becomes, okay, this is what the customer is saying, this is what we should build, whereas it's a bit deeper and nuanced than that. So those were some tough learnings where we lost a lot of time and like a lot of effort and morale, very importantly, because then you have to bring everyone back to this level of excitement that no, guys, let's try again, let's do something different, let's have a different approach, and then you keep iterating on that.
That's a great answer. And, just want to, take a lead from that question. I was listening to an Instagram reel of Sam Altman,
Yeah.
and he said that, if you're having a string of failures, it causes a burnout, right?
Mm-hmm.
And success gives you that momentum. You never feel a burnout when you are succeeding, right? And I want to, talk about that, right? Product launches, as you said, it's, the success rate is obviously less than 80-20. And product launches can be, high pressure situations with, tight deadlines and high stakes.
Yeah.
And of course, you have to accept that it can also be a failure at times, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe, can you talk to us about, how do you manage stress and prevent burnout, especially, during critical product launches, right?
Yeah. I think not just during critical product launches,
True.
I feel like that needs to be kind of part of life
Yes.
or part of work life. And one thing that I do and I encourage my team to do is to have like a very, there needs to be some non-negotiable. For example, my exercise is a non-negotiable for me. And that's where it starts from, right? The way I handle burnout or stress is because I have a certain amount of discipline in working out or in eating right and sleeping as well as possible. Of course, during product launches, things go awry and your deadlines are not being met. You have to compromise on sleep and all of that, but then you try to make up. But it starts from having like that fundamental thing in place where you have a routine. Whenever things go out of control, your routine kind of keeps you in place, in shape. And when your entire team has a routine, I think everyone is like healthier, everyone is in a position to handle that stress in a better way. So that's kind of the fundamental piece to me. And then as you're inching towards a product launch, or there's deadlines, or there's like customer revenue impacting things that you're doing and you need to meet a deadline, just breaking things down. Maybe this is very like simple, but breaking things down, thinking through, like maybe spending a couple of hours just planning about how we need to reach that, like thinking backwards from there. A lot of times what will happen is everyone knows the deadline is like 25th June, but on 22nd June, the QA team is still like, struggling to finish up, or dev is still pushing changes. And once you've done this a couple of times, that you need to have some amount of buffer and all of that. So I guess it's really about the starting point where you plan after learning from a couple of failed experiences, and then you see whether the target is even realistic. Even if it's a stretch target, is it actually realistic? There have been a couple of occasions where you have to take a call that, no, this is not realistic. We have to actually go back to the customer and request for more time. And that sometimes people shy away from doing it because someone like the sales leader or whoever is, or the CEO or the leader or the product leader doesn't want to go back to the customer and have this conversation. But I think it's important for the team to kind of have that confidence to talk to you as a leader, and for you as a leader to go back and say, oh, okay, you know what, this is actually a very, very aggressive timeline. How can we push it out by 2 weeks? What does it mean for you? And in our case, for example, in Hubilo, when we used to build product for the events market, everything is tied to the event date, right? And customers would then add a buffer to that event date and tell us, right? So they would sandbag the date, which meant that we had a little bit of buffer to work with. So then you go back and talk to them. So I think in every company, every situation may be different, but there is some leeway for you to look at. So you try to minimize as much as possible this kind of crazy schedule that might happen for your team. But in cases when it does happen, then there is some control that you have. For example, if you've promised 8 things, but you can do only 6 things with quality, you'd rather choose that option versus doing 8 things with subpar quality and like failing to meet the deadline. So these types of juggling as early as possible, if it's done, then it's better, because then you want to like avoid or minimize this type of stress that happens. To prevent stress towards kind of the towards the middle of this entire work that you're doing, I feel having daily sync ups is a good way to make sure that are you kind of trending in the right direction. Because if your deadline is like 6 weeks away and you're having weekly sync ups, you have only 5 opportunities to make a change, right?
True.
Whereas if you're meeting daily, you have like 25 to 28 opportunities to see that, okay, something is off over here on the 5th day. Let me correct it right now and kind of make any changes. So I guess it starts with planning, even when you're working in like a crazy setup and very short deadlines. You can kind of plan, look at it, either push back in the beginning itself, or then you change your plans along the way. And ultimately, yes, you will be asking your team to put in those extra hours. But I guess if you're showcasing that we are trying to plan it as best as possible, everyone kind of comes together and tries to make it happen, as opposed to just push, push, push. At which point, I think if you do it too many times, then people will, and burnout will happen.
Got it. Since we are discussing timelines and deadlines, right? Uh, I feel obviously there's always some tension trying to take out time for innovation or rather your big bets, right?
Yeah.
You are always in that like speed of like delivering rapid results in a fast-paced environment. How do you encourage innovative thinking while still trying to sort of meet deadlines? Because that's always a challenge. How do you balance like taking trade-offs, the need for innovation, while the pressure is to deliver results really quickly?
Yeah. So this depends on the company, the stage of the company. Let's take an example of a B2B company, maybe a mid-stage startup. The PM team has maybe 3 to 4 people. In this situation, I guess I would tend to have 3 tracks usually. One is the quality track, like whatever you've shipped or you're shipping, that needs to be like very good. Otherwise, you're going to start leaking customers that you've gained. 2 is what can we do to keep those existing customers happy, which means they may have certain requests of your product, some enhancements, things like that. So you really focus on retention by focusing on the quality and these requests. And then I would maybe have 1 PM just completely focused on discovery, which in turn will lead to some innovative ideas, right? So if I've got a team of 4 or 5 PMs, I would keep 3 to 4 of them on this like retention, 2 tracks of retention. And I would have one person think about new ideas. What the challenge that's going to happen is, especially in a B2B setting, if you're say a heavily sales oriented organization, there's a lot of product requests and things like that coming through from sales, right? And if you're a company that is not very clear on your ICP, it's just all over the place, right? So you need a very clear demarcation or a filtering system for ideas that are coming from the business directly, to say yes, no, maybe, right? So that's one thing. So then you don't have 2 or 3 PMs just being consumed by the requests that sales is bringing in. You just have 1 or 1.5 folks kind of focused on that, and then you have one person just responsible for doing great discovery with your existing customer base, even with non-customers. So we do this LinkedIn reach out to people who are not even our customers. We try to get time with them. We make sure that they match our ICP and just have like open-ended conversations or like a specific topic. So in my mind, it's a mixture, which is a difficult balance to keep. It's a mixture of, can we just go out and get like lots of new ideas, but still talking to the market? How do we balance incoming sales requests that might otherwise overwhelm our roadmap? And then how do we make sure that the quality is also in check? And one thing that's worked is to be very open about this particular process across the company. You don't want any GTM team to feel that, hey, the product team is just doing what they want. They're not really listening to us. But then you kind of keep it super transparent that, guys, we have 1,000 hours of engineering bandwidth, right? And maybe 1,500 hours of the entire product design and engineering bandwidth. And this is how we are allocating this bandwidth. Do you think this is like the right mixture? Take their opinions, make some tweaks, and then show them how that bandwidth is being distributed across those 3 tracks. And you take a couple of high priority tasks that they have also requested you to do, right? So this way they have a say, and they can see that, oh, in a quarter, these 2 things are shipping, 2 or 3 of my deals are going to be saved by this. But you don't do the rest of the 80% that has come your way. So I feel that type of a mechanism where you've identified these are the 3 tracks that are important, and it could also be in a specific quarter, you just remove 1 track and just focus on 2. But you make sure that you're clear to the business that, hey guys, this quarter we feel like the quality is like at a decent level. We're not going to do any quality track items. We can take 2 more sales requests, right? So then they're like, oh, this is a happy quarter for us, so let's give them more. So this is how like I've balanced it in the past, and I feel a very transparent kind of, you don't want it to be completely democratic, but you have to have like some method that everyone understands and they feel, okay, this is like a balanced approach.
Correct. Shailesh, one question which keeps coming to my mind, right? When I see, a lot of people who are transitioning into product management from PM school, after a month, they would call me up and say, where have I landed, right? There is so much uncertainty in the role. The tech doesn't listen to me. Designers don't listen to me, right? And a lot of these kind of questions, come up. And it's very difficult, very overwhelming for them to, work in an environment which is, totally ambiguous, right? Filled with uncertainty. And you, I, or Nikunj, we have learned it the hard way, right? Via experience that uncertainty is a part and parcel of, being a product manager. Just like, it's almost like life, right? Anyone can come up during the day and say that, what are the numbers, right? In the next moment, there could be someone, it could be a senior manager, let's say a CXO asking, what is the strategy or the roadmap for the next quarter? Right. So how do you deal with uncertainty, ambiguity, right? And talk to us from a lens of a product leader who is, talking to, new recruits, let's say APMs and PM1s who want to, succeed in their role. What kind of mindset should they have, right? If they want to, be, at least if not embrace ambiguity, at least be cool with it.
Yeah. No, that's a very, very valid observation, and I've seen it time and again. And when people specifically ask me, should I become a PM? It's mostly because they have this misplaced view of, hey, I'll be like this super cool dude, or super cool gal who is going to determine like what.
It'll look good on my LinkedIn as well that I'm a product manager, etc.
So I think they see the glory, but they're not ready for, or not. They don't see the grunt that it will involve, right? So and one thing I tell them is, absolutely keep the glory away right now in your mind. Just think this is like, and I describe the grunt work that they would have to do. And now tell me if you still want to kind of give it a try. It's okay to kind of give it a try, fail, and maybe go back to what you wanted to do, and that's completely fine. But this is how your day to day will look like, and everyone needs that reality check. Unfortunately, I think, and maybe this is my observation more in India, I've seen that there's this glorification. Everyone wants to become a PM because they feel it's going to give them some power or what, and they'll just be able to order people around. But they only realize once they get in 3 months that you cannot order anyone around. And it's not about like getting frustrated, but that is exactly the challenge that a PM needs to go through. So one is just this expectation setting that, look, there is this grunt that is going to be there, and it will take you time to get used to it, but you will get used to it. You will figure out ways. So I just tell them 2 or 3 things. One is uh, internally, like, be very sure that this is what you want to try out. This is what you want to do. Maybe shadow someone who's been in that role inside your company, be friends with them, understand how their day to day looks like, and really imagine, if you like, imagine yourself in their role and see if you would enjoy that. If you don't, then probably it's not worth making that switch. But if you do feel, hey, this is doable, then that's like a good first step. The second thing would be to um, take that to the next level, which is see if there is a role like that internally within your company, because that is like a comfort zone for you, right? You know the product, if you've been there for a while. Making a switch internally as a PM is much easier than actually going out there and becoming a PM of a fresh new thing, new domain. So that kind of eases you into it, eases you into the role. See if you can add value to the person you're shadowing, see if you can add value to the product team in general, and then kind of make that switch. It's much easier. But mentally, the mindset that you need to have is anything can like happen anytime, but be as prepared as possible. So, for example, have a clear set of things that you know you need to work on. Understand how to prioritize that. Communicate extremely clearly. Even if the VP of customer success comes and asks you what's the product roadmap and you don't have it, tell him that it's in the works. Like, I'll give me 2 days, I'll get back to you. Because that is not like the most important thing for that day, most likely, right? So I think a lot of the overwhelming thing that happens for folks is that they get pulled into 10 directions, and they just, by the end of the day or end of the week, they just don't have any energy. So I am a bit extreme. I plan everything on my calendar, but to me, that gives me a lot of clarity. Everyone else freaks out when they see my calendar because it's always full, but it's not full of meetings. It's full of things that I need to get done, which is like the most important thing for me. So I encourage this habit of identify what are the things to be done for the week, identify what are the things to be done for the day, put it all on your calendar. There will be a few things that will drop off that, and that is completely okay. You just need to communicate it if someone is waiting for some information from you. And this method, I think, works at the APM level, at every level of PM. And you need to have this type of a method, and you can invent your own to keep yourself sane. Otherwise, it's very easy to kind of go to the other extreme. And it's happened to me as well. Like, I've had my challenges with not planning enough or not pushing back enough, and then going down this route where you're just putting in a lot more hours, but it's probably not resulting in anything, and your health is also deteriorating, right? So all those types of methods of just structuring your week and your day, pushing back, but also communicating very clearly, I think are some ways in which early to mid to senior folks can
Correct.
handle it. Yeah.
I have a follow-up to that, right? With regards to, uncertainty, the role of a PM often involves, navigating uncertainty. So making decisions with incomplete information. So can you describe a time from your career when you had to make a critical decision without having all the information, right?
Yeah. I think it happens more often than you expect. And maybe in early stage startups, there's not like a lot of data of product usage and all those things, and you need to maybe take some gut calls or qualitative information. Um, I would say I've made mistakes by not having full data, but I've also made mistakes when the data was there. I don't know if there's like a right or a completely wrong thing here. Um, but the previous example that I gave, that was one thing where we did not have data. We still went ahead and took a decision, and it didn't like work out in our favor. There have been other times where we've had some qualitative conversations with customers. We've done some type of a ranking of, hey, what should we work on versus not, and that has proven to be fairly accurate. And by that I mean this is like a, maybe you guys teach this in PM school, which is the $100 test, right? So you implement that, you get people to kind of vote on certain ideas. And then you look at, okay, this is like the top two, and most likely, especially in B2B, those two would be the ones that will like, give you success. So that has worked. Again, it's not like a whole lot of detailed granular data, but just a quick exercise, understand what the top two things need to be, and then go from there. So that is where you have less amount of data to kind of go with. Couple of other things where data may not have been in place is, I suppose, when you're looking to make certain key decisions on a particular quarter's roadmap, okay? And you've got like a couple of high value customers asking for, say, one or two things. And then you've got this long tail of smaller customers who want a few things. And then you have to make a decision on, okay, I only have bandwidth to entertain one or the other group. At that point, I suppose you need to look at the overall business and see, do I need like more revenue from these high value customers, or do I want to replicate more of these medium value customers, and so on. So those are some decisions you could take. Like if you want to improve the number of customers, maybe you would take the second bucket. If you want to improve like overall like average contract value, maybe you take the first group. So this is another instance where you may not have the full data, you may not have had the chance to run like a survey with all these customers and all of that, but you have to take a call both on what you're seeing plus talking to sales, and then come up with an informed decision. So I can think of those two situations.
All right. So, we've been obviously talking about product management and instead, but reflecting on your past experiences, and especially like when you have gone through a series of certain sort of projects, and when you're looking at the quarter that has ended, right? How do you like evaluate projects that have completed, and how do you reflect on what went well, what could be improved? Because quarter and quarter, we are always like going after certain sort of like challenges, and the problem that I've seen in a lot of companies is you tend to become more like a feature factory. I
Yeah.
think that really makes you like a product manager. You evaluate on what's not worked, and like you take your next best action basis. Okay, this did not work because maybe we need to tweak a certain like feature in a certain way, or you just shelve that feature, right?
Yeah.
How do you like reflect? How do you make sure your product managers also are not just like executing, but they are trying to sort of also evaluate what's working, what's not working?
Yeah. So we've done retrospectives like a standard practice. And one thing that I realized is you can wait for a retrospective and then do like a 3-month retro or a 2-month retro, but it's best to do or bring up anything that's like a problem within like a week itself. And you try to do that weekly retro in a very quick manner. And this can be both at an individual level, at the team level, or at the kind of the pod level, right? So at an individual level, you look at your past week, see what could have gone better. You kind of circulate that feedback to the wider product team, and you say, hey, I noticed this. I think we need to change XYZ. And then you take it to your pod, which is like engineering, design, and product, and say, hey guys, can we make some changes over here? Because this is what I've noticed. Because the sooner you can make that change, like you don't have to wait for a formal retrospective at the end of the project, end of 3 months. Might as well do it as soon as possible, and just get that feedback going as quickly as possible. Of course, at the end of any feature push, you kind of get everyone together in a room and let everyone speak very, very openly. And this has helped us a lot in Hubilo, where we have these open retrospective forums, and people are able to kind of voice out whether it's an engineer, a QA person, a PM, a designer, the managers, and so on. And then we look at all of the feedback, collate it. We say that, okay, let's work on these 2 things that we need to get better at, and let's continue to do these 2 or 3 things which have gone well, right? So the way we do it is in a very standard approach, but I prefer not to wait till the end of that entire thing. Rather have that feedback cycle much shorter, so that we can make changes within that 3-month cycle. And then at the end of 3 months, you are in a better position.
Interesting. Shailesh, I want to talk about, how as a product manager, we can overcome, perfectionism, right? I think in all of our careers, right, we have had situations where we have, we've had an imposter syndrome that, am I good enough, right? So in that, what happens is a lot of time we try to give an extra effort, right? As simple as writing, a much more detailed PRD than what is required, right?
Yeah.
At times, giving a UX designer a very high fidelity sort of a wireframe as well, right? Which at times might not be necessary, right? And that eventually might delay, the process of development, the process of, the UI designer or a UX designer doing their bit. That might also delay the process of release at the end of the day, right? So your GTM might also suffer, right? So perfectionism can lead to excess attention to detail, delaying product releases, and this I've seen across companies, right? The PMs who were able to manage or a balance between quality and GTM were the ones who progressed really quickly in their careers, whereas people who are very to the T, they wanted to plan everything to the T.
Yeah.
It was difficult for them to see the the releases of their product.
Yeah.
So how do you go about managing the balance for need for quality versus that need for timely delivery?
Yeah. I think it's a very tricky one.
Yeah.
There's so much context over here, right? It depends. It's like on the company, the stage of the company, the level of UX expectation that users have, and it doesn't matter whether you're an early stage or a late stage, that expectation has only become stronger and stronger. So to me, like a couple of things that come to mind. One is expectation setting, which is you setting certain expectations with your leadership as well. That, okay, what type of quality are we expecting? Because you can't do quality and velocity at the same time, right? It takes time. So you need to kind of weigh those options, which is, do you want this to be like a perfect product, or do you want it to be launched as soon as possible so that we can learn? Once you've set that expectation and your CEO, VP of product, director, whoever has given you that kind of an indication, then I think it's like one thing less to kind of worry about incessantly, right? So suppose they say that, no, this has to be like a really quality effort. Then you go back to your teams and say, guys, like this is what we need to do. And if that means extending the timelines and informing about that early, you can go back and say that, okay, we are going to actually put in 2 weeks more because we're going to do like this quality focus sprint at the end, or like whatever you call it, and make sure that it's really polished. And then you inform everyone else, like the GTM and so on. So thinking through all of this early and then communicating accordingly, I feel just sets the expectation and reduces the stress on you as a PM, because now you know this is what I focus on, because you can't focus on making everything perfect. Now, suppose it's quality, and now you need your designer and your engineers to build like something really awesome. Again, it comes down to expectation setting or being very frank in setting the accountability. For example, you need your designer to be more detail oriented in this scenario and not expect you to kind of, be pixel perfect. So you have to set up that expectation. Of course, if that particular person is not receptive, you need to come in and like do something about it. But if you can set that expectation early, then that person can also be held accountable through that entire process. Similarly, on the engineering side, if quality is what it matters, then maybe your PRD needs to be more detailed than otherwise, right? In the other scenario, you can tell your engineering team, hey guys, this is like a rough sketch of what we need. Let's just build this ASAP and then do like one more iteration before the deadline. But if it's quality, then it's probably better for you to think through multiple scenarios. What does quality really mean for you, and then kind of detail that out so that the engineering team can plan that in a much better way and give you that quality at the end. Because ultimately, like depending on what inputs you're going to give, like the output is going to be that, and you can't give quality and velocity both as goals. So that is some expectation setting need to be done at the leadership level. And then once that is clear, you can kind of carve the path for your team while doing expectation setting and like keeping them accountable on whatever you lead upon. So to me, it's about clarifying what is important for the company, and then making those decisions versus feeling the pressure that I have to do things. I have to do things better, and I have to give this collateral to sales and marketing, right? So that's when the overwhelming thing happens. But if you can just take a step back and see, okay, what is important? Can I achieve alignment with my leadership on this? Then the downstream pieces become a tad easier.
So I think very rightly said, as product manager, right? Maybe in your pursuit of excellence or perfection, you might write a huge PRD, or right, whatever you might write a lot of specification, right? But you need to be really good at, doing trade-offs, right? So that's essentially becomes a very important skill set, right? And let's say if you have maybe 10 user stories to be built, and you know that if I can, maybe that's your level of perfection, if tech creates or develops all these 10 user stories, but you need to be cognizant that GTM is also important. So you strike a balance. You say that, okay, I'll go ahead with probably 5 or 6 of these user stories, and maybe the level of perfection I'll do it in the next sprint, right? As long as you're calling out the things which you're not doing, right? As you said, just setting the expectations with the senior stakeholders and with your team as well, right?
Yeah. So, but one thing a PM should be aware of, and this is when, suppose you've given 10 user stories with a specific deadline, and the engineering team back and says only 5 are possible. You need to then take a step back and say, even if I do these 5, is the product like going to be useful or not?
True.
Like not build it for the sake of building it and
just building it, yeah.
Right? Because if it's not, then entire downstream effort of GTM is also going to waste, because no one's going to adopt that. No one's going to be happy about it. So again, comes down to trade-offs, and then like pushing back further as well, and just aligning everyone to say that, okay, do we believe this definition of like 7 user stories is like what we want to ship? Then let's ship 7, and let's build these 2 additional ones. Take the additional 3 weeks or what you need for that.
Correct.
Versus like compromising on what you are building as well.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Like whatever user stories you decide, your product should be functional, right? It shouldn't be that I've developed, as you said, I've developed 5 or 6 user stories and the product isn't functional.
Yeah.
So Sailesh, one last question for the day. This is going back into like PM aspirants.
Mhm.
Let's say a newbie person, like going back to your narrative, right? QA is trying to figure whether product management is right for them, right? Or maybe someone who has just become a product manager right now, they go through imposter syndrome, or like newbie PMs also have this fear of failure or risk averse behavior, right? How do you believe that you have some like core traits? And I'm pretty sure like even leaders today go through imposter syndromes or like fear of failure. Is
Yeah.
there some framework which makes you believe, hey, I'm good at this? Or like coming to your today, do you have like a framework to like assess whether I'm good at X, Y, Z, and these are the two areas I need to work on?
Yeah, yeah. No, I was just going to say that imposter syndrome can strike at any time, at
True.
any level you may be at. Um, for me, it has been about just talking to someone close. It could be like my manager, it could be a friend who's been through that circle or through that cycle. Uh, and I think you need to know yourself also well. Some people are extremely confident, and that's just how they are, right? Some people have always have that self-doubt, and no matter what you do, that self-doubt is always there. Um, both are probably not the right way, right? If you're extremely confident, then you may be overlooking certain things that you need to improve. And if you have a lot of self-doubt, then you're just undermining yourself and not like pulling through fully, right? So talking to some folks that you know or have been through that cycle has helped me a lot. Consciously expanding your role, I think, is extremely important. While you will face imposter syndrome, it's almost like go take this new role or an updated role because you know you will feel imposter syndrome, you feel you're not good enough. You kind of fight through that. Um, and whatever it takes, suppose you're a suppose you're a senior PM, and now you need to take on certain additional GTM responsibilities to get to the next level of being, say, a principal PM or something like that. Um, Go talk to like a product marketing person, go talk to sales, understand their world, um, see how you can enable them. A lot of PMs tend to be in this silo that my job is to build, my job is to like keep shipping. They've created those boundaries for themselves, right? And they don't perhaps realize that that's going to actually stagnate their growth, because if you can't enable sales, if you can't enable marketing, then you can't like grow in this role, because ultimately the product management function was built so that there is like alignment, or there is every team is kind of going towards one goal. And if you're not comfortable, or if you hesitate a lot to kind of go out of that, then it's going to become troublesome. And yes, you will feel that imposter syndrome. But the more you can learn from others, the more you can figure out how to help them, and all of those things. That's going to help. And it never really goes away fully as well, right? So just being comfortable in that feeling that yes, you will not be like a complete expert at, say, director PM level, because here's the thing, every company has a very different definition for PM and PM roles from start to the high, to the top levels. So you just define like how you want it to be for yourself. But I think consciously every, if not 12 months, every 18 months, consciously adding something more to your kitty, because you've already gained expertise in three things. Now you want to add a fourth thing. Those three things will be with you, right? You can do it. But that fourth thing is going to help you kind of grow. And the only way to kind of be comfortable with that imposter syndrome is to like just keep talking to people, doing stuff, being hands-on in that particular fourth skill, never ever feeling that now I can like, I just have to give orders. everything else will be done. So those things could help in overcoming it, I suppose.
That's a great thought which you said, right? Talking to people about feeling like an imposter, because a lot of people might feel they will be hesitant to talk to their boss or the manager or to their peer that hey, I feel unsure about my role, right? But then if you talk to them, your manager is there to take care of you, right? Ideally, he should be there. Yeah, that's a great tip, and that's a great thought to end the podcast. Thank you so much, Shailesh, for taking out the time.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, Alesh. Invaluable lesson, and until next time, keep building.